Well, here we are at the end of chapter 5. We're in verse 33 of Ephesians 5. And we're also at the end of the year 2021. I don't think any of us are going to miss 2021 all that much. That's not to say that there wasn't any good things. I think that for me personally, I experienced a lot of challenges, a lot of growth. Having COVID itself was an experience all unto itself that, it's like so many things we go through, the kind of Jobian experiences where we say, God, don't ever make me go through that ever again. But thank you for what I gained from the experience. This year has been really challenging for all of us. I understand that, and you could probably share more things than I have experienced. We've lost some very dear friends. We've seen a lot of people go through some tremendous struggles. And yet at the end of the day, when we step back and look at it, we can say that God was faithful and God was good. He never left us alone. I think about David in the Psalm saying, I'm old. I used to be young and now I'm old, but I've never seen the righteous forsaken or his seed begging bread. In other words, he said, God is always there. Even in the bad times, we find that God is there, sometimes more wonderfully and more profoundly than we ever imagined possible. So as we come to the end of this year, I just really encourage you to take a little time to reflect on what were the benefits of this last year. What good things happened to you? I've seen how it affected even our church. I mean, I'm pretty amazed at just how people have come to really appreciate the value of community and fellowship and being together. And we reopened our services at a time when most churches were choosing to stay closed. And we had a little bit of hassle from governmental authorities who always seem to want to have their way. But the simple fact was that we found that we had taken being able to come together in community for granted. We just kind of assumed church will be open, I'll go there. If it's convenient, I'll go. If the game starts at 1, I'll show up. If it shows up, game starts at 10, I'm too busy. I got to play golf, I got to do this, I got to do that. And we're running all around. Suddenly everything is shut down. And people are looking around and they follow online in their church services. And I'm told that on average, most people stopped watching after the first month because churches aren't equipped to do TV shows. So what happened? People started saying, where can we go to worship other people? And we were blessed. I mean, we had so many of our people showed up and we just seen the church grow in some very significant ways, but not just in numbers or in the things that people often count as important, but I've just seen such an amazing growth in love and community and fellowship among people. Some marriages have hit the rocks, some marriages have gone deep, some families have been really made more whole. There's some really good things that have happened. And that's what struggles and hardships and difficulties do when we put them at the foot of the cross and give them to Jesus. When we cast our cares upon him, he has a way of rushing in like a flood and just doing amazing things. And so I'm not really anticipating 2020 being all that great. I mean, I see so many dark clouds on the horizon, and yet at the same time, God is faithful. In fact, I'm going to be doing a new series. I've started a new series actually every year at this time of the year I do What the World's Coming To series. And I have a whole bunch of new thoughts I want to share about things that I see coming. And I think that things that we really need to get anchored in truth in the scriptures so that we're better prepared to face the months and years that are ahead of us, to fight the good fight of faith. But having said all that, let me get on to verse 33 before I use up all of my time. The very last verse in this dialogue about our monologue about marriage, Paul says, however, and however is one of those concluding words like therefore. So in light of everything we've looked at, he says, you need to remember this, keep this central. Each one of you must love his wife as he loves himself, and the wife must respect her husband. In that phrase, Paul encapsulates everything that he's been saying, but in a slightly different way that I think is helpful to us. First of all, you need to understand, as I said a couple of weeks ago, the idea for a man to treat his wife with respect is something that most of us were taught to do. I mean, I open doors for women. When a woman comes into the room, I stand. I mean, that was the way I raised. We always, don't start eating until everybody's ready to eat. All those kind of things are just, normal manners and protocols that we were taught. Hopefully you were taught. And in a way, it's just that we have an obligation to treat other people respectfully. And I find most men will treat their wife respectfully. She's the mother of his children, and she's, caring for him in some ways. And yet, where men begin to struggle is really loving their wife in that sacrificial way. And I think that inherently men tend to be self-focused and not see that I need to be always loving my wife. And particularly when she's done or said things that offend me and hurt my feelings. And at that point, if she's treated me disrespectfully, in my mind, I'm saying, well, if you're going to treat me that way, then I'm not going to love you. And believe me, I did that a lot of times in my marriage. And I remember God, when he showed me this passage, I suddenly realized that it doesn't matter what my wife does or says or how she treats me and react. It's never justified for me to react in kind. It's never justified for me to be silent and to, withdraw and not show her affection. My responsibility is to continue loving her even when she may not be treating me the way I want to be treated. That's just my responsibility. It doesn't matter whether I feel like it or it's, and certainly shouldn't be a manipulative technique, but it's simply saying I have an obligation to love you. Even if you don't want me to love you right now, I need to love you. I need to care for you. I need to sit there and really try to understand why you're unhappy or why you're saying the thing. If you show me disrespect, I need to find out what is it that I have done that's brought about that disrespect, or what other source is that coming from? And instead of just being offended and walking away, I need to figure out what that is. That's how I have to realize that I need to continually flow in the direction of loving my wife, regardless of how things are going, regardless of how I'm feeling. On the other side of the coin, he says that a wife has to respect her husband. And this is kind of interesting because where it's really easy for a man to respect his wife but not love her when she's behaving disrespectfully, it's very easy for a wife to love her husband and yet not have respect for him. And so this becomes her challenge, that he may be treating her in an unloving way, and she's tempted to tell him where to get off and how to jump and how high and where to land. And basically Paul's saying, don't go there. Don't begin to diminish his character, diminish his image of himself. And this is the fault that women have. They just, they want to rip their husband a new hole and tell him to crawl into it because they are so angry or frustrated or hurt or wounded by the way he has treated them. And what that only does is it starts the cycle. The snowball begins to pick up steam and roll downhill. And suddenly people are yelling and screaming at each other and sometimes even coming to fisticuffs and violence, which is never justified, never allowed, should never even be. I mean, if there's any violence in a relationship, it stops right now. I mean, it's over right there. That's completely out of bounds and beyond the pale, unacceptable on any level. But having said that, I've had men say, well, it's her fault because she pushed my buttons. And sometimes he's telling the truth. He's not telling it objectively, but he's telling the truth. A wife knows the weaknesses of her husband. And as men, we're trying to come across like we're strong and in control and, large and in charge, when in fact, we're deep down inside, we're frightened little boys who hope that the world doesn't figure out how scared we are and how at risk we feel in life. And for a wife to begin to jump on that, well, you never make enough money, you never work hard enough, you never take care of this, you're never there for the kids. When you do that, you're pushing him away. You're really, it says in Proverbs 14:1, it says, a wise woman builds her house and a foolish woman tears it down. When you do that, ladies, you are destroying your own home, you're destroying your own marriage. And here's the thing that women don't understand. Your children are wounded when you say offensive things to their father. A husband needs to love his wife because his kids love her, and he needs to show her that same love and respect and value. Kids love their fathers, and when the mom is belittling him and putting him down and raging at him, basically they begin to resent the fact that you show such disrespect to your father, because basically if they feel like their father is a small man, they're going to feel like a small person. a valueless person. So these things come back and haunt us. And so it's critically important that we understand that wives, respect your husband, and husbands, love your wife, and it'll come back to you as a great investment. It's not easy. Rarely is it fun or convenient, but it's important. And that's what we need to understand is in an age where people are obsessed with becoming important in the eyes of other people, we need to realize that whether we're important to other people is meaningless. What is important is that we're doing things that are important. We're doing things that will make a difference, especially in the lives of our husbands and our wives and our children and our friends. Well, out of time, longest of the week. But I pray that God will bless you as you go into the weekend and you have a wonderful celebration of the new year. You have a wonderful celebration with your friends and family, and it, of course, that it's sane and sober, but should go without saying. But the bottom line is we'll see you on Sunday morning as we begin the new year, looking at God's Word and seeing where God is taking us and what we should expect and how we should respond. God bless you and go in His grace.